Emma Harper never expected a quiet Sunday afternoon to change her life. But sometimes the biggest shifts happen when the world is at its calmest. And that day felt calm enough to hide a storm beneath its surface. The sun was slipping through the tall windows of her Colorado home, casting soft golden lines across the living room floor. She had just finished folding blankets and straightening pillows, the kind of small weekend tasks she enjoyed because they made the house feel warm and lived in. Daniel, her husband, was grocery shopping, and she thought she had a full hour of peace, but she didn't realize someone else was already in the house. When she stepped into the living room, she stopped mid-motion, surprised to see Jason, her 20-year-old stepson, standing alone near the bookshelf. He had returned from college the night before, tired but cheerful, and she assumed he was still sleeping in. But now he stood completely still, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. "Jason," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He turned quickly, his expression tightening like someone trying to cover up a crack in a wall before anyone noticed. He gave her a half-smile that didn't quite match the tension in his eyes. His hand moved slightly behind his back, and Emma felt her curiosity stir. She took a few steps closer, enough to see the object he hid. It was a framed photograph, one she had never seen before, although she had lived in this house for 5 years and dusted that same shelf countless times. The frame was old, silver, a little worn at the edges, as if it had been touched many times over the years. "I didn't mean to go through anything," Jason said, his voice low and awkward. "It just fell when I walked by, that's all." But Emma sensed something off in the way he said it, like the truth sat somewhere behind his words, trembling. She moved beside him and gently took the frame from his hand. Jason didn't stop her, but she could feel him hold his breath. Emma raised the photograph to the light, and her chest tightened with surprise. The picture showed Daniel, her husband, many years younger, his hair a little longer, his smile softer. Standing beside him was a woman Emma didn't recognize. A woman with dark hair, bright eyes, and a closeness to Daniel that went beyond simple friendship. They stood so close their shoulders touched naturally, like it wasn't the first time or the last. Emma felt a strange heat rise in her face. Not jealousy, not anger, but confusion. Deep confusion that wrapped around her heart. She didn't know why she felt so unsettled. Everyone had past relationships, and Daniel had mentioned his life before her. But this photo wasn't placed with the others she knew. It wasn't stored in an album or displayed proudly. It had been tucked behind books and old souvenirs, hidden in plain sight. Jason reached out as if to take it back, but his hand fell short, unsure. "I didn't think Dad still had that," he said quietly. His tone wasn't casual. It sounded sad, heavy, almost apologetic. Emma turned to look at him fully for the first time since entering the room. He wasn't just startled. He looked hurt, as if the photograph reminded him of something painful he kept buried. She opened her mouth to ask him who the woman was, but Jason's eyes shifted away, and he stepped back toward the hallway. "I should get ready for work later," he said quickly, even though she knew he didn't start his part-time job for several hours. He walked past her, giving her a small, forced smile that was meant to end the conversation. She watched him go, her heart twisting with the sense that something meaningful had slipped through her fingers before she could understand it. When he disappeared into his room, the house fell into an uneasy silence. Emma remained where she was, holding the photograph in both hands. She looked at the woman again. Something about her posture, the way she leaned slightly toward Daniel, suggested history. Not fleeting, not shallow, but deeply rooted. A kind of familiarity that only came when two people had shared something significant. Emma tried to swallow the lump forming in her throat. She knew Daniel had lived a full life before meeting her. She knew Jason's mother had not stayed in the picture, and Daniel avoided talking about that part of his life, saying only that it was painful. She respected that. She trusted him. But now, standing with the hidden photo, she felt a quiet ache forming inside her. The kind of ache that comes when you sense a truth you were never meant to find out. She placed the photo on the table and stepped back, studying it with a critical eye she hadn't meant to develop. She wondered why Daniel had hidden it. Did he keep it because he missed the past? Or because it held some unfinished chapter he didn't want to share? And why had Jason reacted with such discomfort, such raw emotion? Was this woman connected more deeply to Jason's life than she knew? Emma took a slow breath and reminded herself she was overthinking. It was just a picture, she told herself, an old memory. But the unease stayed, clinging to her thoughts like a shadow she couldn't shake off. When she reached out to flip the frame face down the way Jason had done, she hesitated. She wanted to ask Daniel about it, but a small voice whispered that maybe she wasn't ready for the answer. Marriage was a place of trust, but even trust had its boundaries, and now she wondered what the truth behind the photo would do to the balance they had built over the years. She placed the photo gently back where she found it and stepped away, but the moment stayed with her like a knot tightening in her stomach. She tried returning to her chores, folding laundry in the bedroom, wiping the kitchen counter, but her mind kept circling back to Jason's expression. His startled eyes, the tremble in his voice, the way he seemed to know more than he wanted to say. His reaction had not been the reaction of someone who simply found an old picture. It felt personal, emotional, almost like a secret he had been carrying alone. As she walked through the hallway, Emma paused at Jason's closed door. She considered knocking, asking him directly, but something held her back. The boy had always been gentle, respectful, and careful with his feelings, opening up only when he felt safe. She didn't want to push. She didn't want to make him feel cornered. Instead, she walked away with a quiet sigh, promising herself she would talk to Daniel the moment he got home. But even that thought made her heart tighten. She could already imagine the look on his face when she asked him about the woman. Would he be surprised, or would he react the way Jason did, with that strange mixture of guilt and fear? The afternoon drifted slowly, and the house felt heavier than usual. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore. It was tense, heavy with unspoken questions. Emma sat on the couch, rubbing her thumb along her knuckles the way she did when she needed to think. She tried to recall every moment Daniel had ever mentioned Jason's mother. The few times he brought her up, he spoke with careful words, picking each phrase like someone walking over thin ice. Emma assumed it was because the breakup was hard, because Jason had suffered, because the past hurt him. Now she wondered if those half-formed explanations hid something deeper, something he didn't want her to know. Her heart squeezed with a soft ache. She loved Daniel deeply. She trusted him. But trust wasn't blind. Trust needed truth. And she sensed she had just touched the edge of a truth that had been hidden for years. When the front door eventually opened and Daniel stepped in carrying grocery bags, Emma looked at him with new eyes. She didn't say anything yet. She simply watched the man she loved, the man she believed she understood, and wondered how much of his past had never reached her heart. The air felt heavier again, and Emma knew one thing for certain. The awkward moment with her stepson wasn't small at all. It was the beginning of something bigger, something unsettling, something that would eventually expose everything Daniel had tried to keep buried. And as she prepared to ask him the questions forming inside her, she couldn't shake the quiet fear that the answers might change everything she thought she knew about her family. The days after seeing the hidden photograph moved strangely for Emma, as if the world around her kept going, but her thoughts stayed trapped in the moment she saw Daniel standing beside the mysterious woman. She told herself not to worry, to let the past stay in the past, but the image remained clear in her mind, tightening her chest every time she tried to breathe normally. She kept replaying Jason's unsettled reaction, the way his voice broke slightly when he said he didn't think Daniel had kept that picture, and the way he quickly escaped from the conversation. It made her feel as though a door had opened for only a second, giving her a glimpse of something she wasn't supposed to see. For 2 nights she hardly slept. Every time she turned, she felt Daniel's warm presence beside her, unaware of the questions swirling through her mind. She needed to ask him. She needed the truth. So on a quiet Wednesday evening, when he came home looking tired from another long day at the office, she made herself face it. He walked into the kitchen, loosened his tie, and smiled at her the way he always did, but for the first time, the smile made her uneasy instead of comforted. She watched him rinse his hands, watched his shoulders rise and fall with each breath, and then, gathering every ounce of courage, she asked the question that had been living inside her like a weight she could no longer carry. "Daniel," she said softly, "did Jason ever mention someone named Lily?" The sound of the name changed the room instantly. It was like she had spoken a word that the walls themselves reacted to. Daniel's body froze. His hand stopped mid-reach above the counter. His eyes didn't rise to hers. The silence that followed was not confusion or surprise. It was recognition. He knew exactly what name she had spoken, and the fear that flickered across his face made her heart thump painfully. Slowly he turned toward her. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. Emma swallowed, keeping her tone calm even though her heart felt unsteady. She told him about the photo, about how she had found it accidentally, about the look on Jason's face when he saw it. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself against something heavy. When he opened them again, the expression she saw was a mixture of guilt, sorrow, and something deeper. An emotion she couldn't name. He moved to the dining table and sat down slowly, like a man preparing to confess something he had kept buried for years. Emma followed and sat across from him, waiting, her hands resting still even though her chest felt tight. For a moment, Daniel seemed unable to speak. He rubbed his forehead, stared at the table, and finally whispered, "Lily was someone I knew a long time ago." Emma said nothing, letting him continue. "We were young," he said. "Too young. And everything between us happened too fast. I fell in love with her before I understood what real love meant. She was unpredictable, full of dreams, always chasing something that never stayed in her hands for long." His voice trembled slightly, not with lingering love, but with the pain of remembering something unresolved. "When Jason was born," he continued, "everything changed. She wasn't ready for a family. She wasn't ready for responsibility. She wanted freedom more than anything. And she left when Jason was still a baby." Emma felt a softness rise inside her, the kind of empathy that comes from understanding someone's old wounds. She had always known Daniel carried hurt from his past, but she never knew the shape of it until now. "I tried raising Jason alone for years," he said, his gaze distant. "I worked, I struggled, I did everything I could. But every time he asked about his mother, I didn't know what to say." He looked at Emma finally, and she saw the weight he had been holding for so long. "When I met you," he said gently, "you gave me peace I didn't think I deserved. I didn't want to bring old ghosts into our home. I wanted us to build something new." Emma felt her eyes warm, but she kept her emotions steady. She understood now why he hid the picture. She understood why his voice had always tightened when talking about Jason's childhood. But one question still pressed on her chest. "Why did Jason react like that?" she asked quietly. Daniel hesitated, then looked down at his hands. "Because," he said slowly, "there's more to the story." Emma's pulse quickened. She leaned forward, waiting. Daniel took a deep breath. "Lily didn't just leave. She didn't stay in touch. She disappeared. For years, Jason had no idea who she was. Then, when he was around 12, she reached out. Only to him. Not to me." Emma felt a sudden ache for the boy she had grown to care for. She wanted to be part of his life again, Daniel continued, but only when it was convenient for her. She made promises she didn't keep, appeared and then disappeared again. And each time Jason got hurt, the pain in his voice was unmistakable. Emma imagined a younger Jason waiting by a phone or a mailbox for someone who never came, and her heart twisted sharply. "I tried protecting him," Daniel said, "but I couldn't stop him from wanting to know her." He paused, his voice thickening. "The last time she contacted him, he was in high school. She said she wanted to visit. She didn't show up." Emma covered her mouth with her hand, feeling a wave of sadness for the boy who never got what he needed. "That picture," Daniel said, "was one of the few photos we ever took together. I kept it because I didn't want to erase Jason's history, but I hid it because it brought more pain than comfort." Emma nodded slowly, understanding the complexity of it all. But she sensed that the story wasn't finished. She saw it in the way he fidgeted, the way he kept glancing toward the hallway where Jason's bedroom door was closed. "Daniel," she whispered, "there's something you're not saying." He looked at her, and for a moment she saw fear in his eyes, fear of whatever truth he was about to reveal. "She contacted me too," he said, voice barely above a breath. The words felt like a stone dropped into her stomach. "When?" she asked, her voice thin. "A few months ago," he admitted. "Before you and I talked about buying the cabin, before Jason went back to school." Emma's breath caught. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, hurt leaking into her tone despite all her efforts to stay calm. "Because," he said, his voice cracking, "I didn't want to worry you. And because I didn't know what she wanted." He buried his face in his hands for a moment. She said she had changed, he continued. Said she wanted to talk about the past, about Jason, about everything she walked away from. But I didn't want to reopen something that could tear this family apart. Emma sat back, her heart trembling. She wasn't angry, just shaken by how much had been happening behind her back without her knowing. She felt compassion for the pain Daniel carried, but she also felt a sharp sting that he hadn't told her sooner. She opened her mouth to ask what Lily wanted, what she said, what she expected, but Daniel cut in first, his voice shaking. Emma, he whispered. I don't think she reached out just to reconnect. There's something else she hinted at. Something I didn't want to believe. He looked at her with eyes filled with worry. She said she wants to see me. In person. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. For a moment the room blurred, and all she could hear was the unsteady rhythm of her heartbeat. She saw the pain in Daniel's expression, the regret in his voice, and she knew the storm she sensed earlier was not in her imagination. Something from Daniel's past had returned. Something powerful enough to shake their marriage from its foundation. And as he sat there, struggling to explain a truth he had kept hidden, Emma realized that the secret was much bigger than a forgotten photograph or a long-lost woman. This was something that had the potential to change everything she believed about the life she had built with Daniel. And deep down, she knew the next part of the truth would be even harder to hear. The days after Daniel's confession felt like walking through fog for Emma, not because she doubted her marriage, but because she sensed something bigger waiting beneath the surface, something neither she nor Jason had been fully prepared to face. She tried to continue her routine, making breakfast, watering the plants, folding laundry, but her mind kept circling back to the moment Daniel said Lily wanted to see him. It was not jealousy that bothered her, but fear of unfinished business, fear of old wounds that refused to heal, fear that someone who had once walked away could still tear open the delicate threads tying their family together. By the third day, the tension had settled into the air like dust no one knew how to clean. Jason avoided conversation, moving through the house quietly, carrying shadows in his eyes that reminded Emma of the little boy she imagined he had been, waiting for a mother who never came. She wanted to comfort him, but she also knew pushing him would only make him retreat further. So when he appeared at her doorway that night, whispering, "Can we talk?" her heart tightened with relief and worry at the same time. Jason stepped in slowly, closing the door behind him, his face pale with worry and something deeper, guilt. He sat on the edge of the couch, shoulders stiff, as if he had been holding something heavy for too long. "I'm sorry about the other day," he said, his voice low. "I didn't mean for things to get weird. I didn't want you to think I was hiding something from you." Emma sat beside him, careful not to pressure him. "I just want to understand," she said. "You don't owe me anything, but I care about you. I care about your dad. If there's something I should know, you can tell me." Jason stared at his hands, twisting his fingers nervously. For a moment Emma worried he might shut down again. But then he took a deep breath and forced himself to speak. "She contacted me," he said. "Lily. She reached out last month." The room went completely still. Even the quiet hum of the house seemed to fade. "She said she wanted to talk to me," Jason continued, "and that she wanted to talk to Dad too. She said she regretted everything she did when I was little." His voice cracked with a mix of hope and resentment. "She said she made a mistake leaving." Emma felt her stomach drop. Not because she feared losing Daniel's love, but because she could see how deeply this affected Jason. "I didn't tell Dad at first," he said. "I didn't know if it was real. She disappeared so many times before. I didn't want to get my hopes up again." He looked up at Emma finally, his eyes glossy with old hurt. "You've been more like family to me than she ever was. I didn't want to ruin what we have here." The words hit Emma in the chest like a warm ache. She wanted to hug him, but she waited, letting him speak at his own pace. When she reached out again, he said, "I finally told Dad. I thought he'd ignore her. I thought he would protect us from getting hurt again. But he didn't. He told her he needed time. He wasn't sure he wanted to talk to her." Jason took a shaky breath. "But she sent a message last week saying she was coming back to Colorado. She said she wants to talk face to face." Emma felt a cold rush move through her, but she stayed calm for Jason's sake. "Does she want to see you?" she asked. Jason nodded. "She said she wants to fix things." But I don't know if people like her can really fix anything. I don't know if she's changed. She didn't say why she left all those times before. She just said she was sorry. Before Emma could respond, the front door opened downstairs. The sound echoed through the quiet house, and both of them froze. Jason stood up quickly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Emma rose too, her pulse quickening. Daniel stepped inside moments later, his face tight, his eyes darker than usual, like he'd been carrying something heavy all day. The grocery bag in his hand hung loosely, and he placed it on the counter without looking at either of them. "We need to talk," he said, turning toward them slowly. His voice was steady, but there was something fragile beneath it, something that felt close to breaking. Jason moved to the edge of the living room, his expression a mix of fear and determination. Emma walked closer, trying to read Daniel's face. He looked like a man battling two storms, one from his past, one from his present. "I got a message from her," he finally said. The word "her" hit the room like a dropped stone. Jason shifted. Emma swallowed. Daniel continued. "Lily said she's already in Colorado." Jason's face drained of color. Emma felt her breath catch. "She wants to meet," Daniel said, his voice trembling. "Tomorrow." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, and impossible to break. Jason took a step forward. "What does she want?" he asked, a sharp edge in his voice. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "She said she needs to tell us something. Something important. Something she should have told us years ago." Emma felt a wave of unease move through her. "Important how?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "She wouldn't say." He turned away for a moment, gripping the back of a chair as though he needed something solid to hold on to. "She said it's about why she left. Why she kept leaving. Why she stayed gone so long." Jason clenched his jaw. "Why now?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at his son, then at Emma, and his eyes filled with fear. Not of Lily, but of what she might reveal. Finally, he whispered. "She said she's not coming back to reopen old wounds. She said she's coming because she doesn't want to die with this secret." Emma felt her heart stutter. Jason's eyes widened. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the weight of the words settled over them. "Is she sick?" Emma asked softly. Daniel nodded slowly. "She said she's had a hard year. And she wants to explain everything before it's too late." Jason sat down abruptly, as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. Emma moved to his side instinctively, resting her hand gently on his shoulder. Daniel sank into the chair across from them, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "I don't know how to protect you both from whatever she's bringing. But we can't run from it. Not anymore." Emma listened, her heart breaking a little for both of them. Jason fighting the return of a mother who hurt him, and Daniel fighting the ghosts of a past he tried so hard to bury. She looked from father to son, seeing not two separate fears but one shared wound that had never fully healed. And she knew deep inside that this moment, this painful, fragile moment, was the beginning of a truth that had been pushed away for nearly 2 decades. A truth that had finally come home. She took a quiet breath, steadying herself. Whatever came next, whatever secret Lily carried, whatever past they were about to face, it wouldn't just change Jason's life. It wouldn't just reshape Daniel's past. It would change the entire future of their family. And Emma felt with growing certainty that the truth waiting in the next chapter might be even more powerful, more heartbreaking, and more life-altering than any of them had imagined.